Welcome to Montecalvi Winery in the heart of Chianti Classico. Actually, we're in Grape in Chianti, which is halfway between Florence up there in the north and Siena back here in the south. So we're bang in the middle. Now, I don't know if you know, but there's a lot of Chiantis, but Chianti Classico was the very first one set up in the 1700s. Doesn't mean that they weren't making wine here for hundreds of years before that, but in the 1700s they decided to make a limit to what could be called Chianti Classico and what kind of wine it was going to be. So the main grape of Chianti Classico is Sangiovese. That's the grape of Tuscany, and that's the main rule of Chianti Classico. It has to be 80% Sangiovese. So my dad, who was from Umbria, came, bought this farmhouse estate and refurbished the house, built a wine cellar where the cows would have been once upon a time, and replanted some vineyards. Now, if you were here in the 1950s, 60s, 70s and saw the vineyards, it was quite different from today. We had very wide rows. After the Second World War, the tractor became available. And of course everybody wanted it because these hills are really steep and it's boiling hot. So when the first tractors came out, everyone wanted them, but they were ginormous. And they wouldn't fit in old vineyards, which were really narrow because it was just the guy and the ox. Of course, in the olden days, they wanted as much crop as possible, which in reality is wrong, but in practice is right, because if you put the vineyards close together, you get more concentrated grapes. So with new viticulture, with the new way of replanting that we have nowadays, what we're doing is we're putting the vines closer together so that they have to fight for what they want in the soil. Think of wild animals that are running around all day seeking their food. Their flavors are much more intense and they're very, very skinny. Just like grapes that have been stressed that way. When a vine is close to another vine and they're all fighting for the same food in the ground, they make smaller berries. And with red wine, it's all about the skin. So the smaller the berry, more skin in proportion to the juice. So my dad came in, ripped out the old vineyard that was really wide apart and planted what we call a densely planted vineyard. And that's the vineyard you're looking at right now, the Montecalvi vineyard. It's been called Montecalvi, this vineyard, for centuries. And the tradition here is, if a vineyard has a name, you do not change it, even if you replant it with different grapes. So we're going to have a speed date of the 3 wines from Montecalvi today. We're going to start with the Chianti Classico and then we're going to move on to the 2 IGTs, the 2 Super Tuscans. So starting with the Chianti Classico with a nice black rooster on the neck, 80% Sangiovese, the grape of Tuscany, and then a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon and Cannaiolo. So I'm going to pour it into my glass. Swivel, swivel, swivel. Sniff it. Delicate fruit, little cherry, little raspberry today, maybe a little strawberry. Nice tannins, lovely acidity, really fresh. Now Chianti Classico, a really humble wine, but it's like your best friend. It doesn't get in the way, doesn't overpower you. It's good at any time of the day, and you don't need to make a fancy meal for it. Okay, on to the next one. So we're going to start with the first IGT, VV, Vigna Vecchia. This is from a really old vineyard, 1932. Similar blend to the Chianti Classico, so it's 95% Sangiovese, but these Sangiovese vines are over 80 years old, and a little bit of Cannaiolo, which is another Italian old-fashioned grape. So pour this one in. Color a little bit richer than the Chianti Classico, okay, which is going to tell me that it's probably a little bit more concentrated. Swivel, swivel, swivel. Smell it. Okay, smell is a lot more intense. So it's still cherries, possibly raspberries. I'm trying to think, but it's a deeper smell. And much smoother going down than the Chianti Classico. So same home, same parents, same grape varietal, but just because it's this really old vineyard, it's just a completely different person. So here we have Montecalvi's second IGT, Super Tuscan. San Piero, which is the name of the vineyard, 80% Cabernet Sauvignon, then a little Merlot and Syrah, also known as Shiraz, same grape. So, pour it into my glass. I'm going to expect it to be darker, just because it's Cabernet Sauvignon. And yes, it is. Look how black it is. Actually, I call it inky, because it looks like it would stain me. Swivel, 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 to get those aromas coming. This is so yummy. It's like black currants and blackberries and blueberries. It's like a pie. But it's really dry in the mouth. So the nose is really, really sweet and appetizing. It's like my dessert, but I put it in my mouth and it goes down really fresh and light, like I could drink loads of this.